The year is 307 post-Dracones. Far north of Octon and its parent nation of Odresh lies a war-torn nation recovering from years of revolution. The newly established People's Union of Kingshaw. Settled long ago by the native peoples of the same name, the land upon which the nation now sits was colonized by the Turlan nations of Vorlont and Talimglaw. These colonies united during the Tarath Spring to form the nation of Willemsland, which, like its cousins in Andlia and Odresh, was ostensibly a democracy. Yet, even after independence, a culture of oppression continued, as natives were treated as second-class citizens. In 289, the Lands Rat of Willemsland ejected all delegates of native ethnicity, and barred all natives from running for office. This was the final straw. As oppressed peoples from across the nation, natives, Newlanders, and Brokeltiques alike rose up against the bourgeoisie elites of Willemsland in the Silver Revolution. The war brought great devastation to the nation, stifling its industrial growth and resulting in mass poverty as resource shortages touched every corner of the fledgling state. Yet hope remains. After toppling the oppressive regime that refused to accept all people as equal, the ideology of Varanism became the principal force guiding the newly renamed Kingshaw. A new experiment was born, where land and industry would be held in common by the people. Yet this new nation found few friends in the world. Odresh and Andlia, guided by marketism, would not have a nation that rejects the idea of free enterprise. Nor would the monarchist nations of the Old World welcome a nation that refuses to abide by their hierarchical order. Kingshaw remains isolated. It must depend on itself. Premier Martin has led the nation through the horrors of the revolution. A young but wise man, Martin has redrawn the internal borders of Kingshaw to inspire autonomy and self-reliance. The province of Saffier has long been a neglected backwater under Willemsland, yet as a peninsula with several large natural harbors and a bounty of natural resources, Premier Martin has wisely granted Saffier greater autonomy, establishing it as a new autonomous republic. It is now up to us to build a new society off of the old, leaving behind the oppressive shackles of former ideologies, to show the world the power of Varanism and of the common man. For the people and the Union, arise now, Republic of Saffier. Heyo folks, and welcome back to Saffier. It's been a while, a lot longer than I intended for it to be. The death of Octon, it honestly really got to me, because, that was my baby. For the longest time, I was really, really proud of that project, and it's the whole reason I, started my YouTube channel, so losing that kind of made me go through a crisis of identity on what I want to do with this channel, where I want to go, and what the next steps were for me. Along with that, I had an incredibly busy summer, and now I'm back at college again, so I'm incredibly busy constantly. And I struggle to find time between my lack of motivation, my other responsibilities, to actually come back to this channel. But, Saffier died before Octon did, and I mentioned that I really wanted to restart the series in a new and different version. So, without Octon to fill the niche of a, slower kind of storytelling series, I want to do that here with Saffier. I know it's not City Skylines, and honestly, because it's not City Skylines, I know this series is going to do poorly. But I have a lot of fun with Saffier. It is the game Workers and Resources Soviet Republic, if you've not heard about it, is a city building management game with an incredibly in-depth simulation based off of what communist cities were kind of run like. Unlike City Skylines, where you kind of zone the buildings and just let things grow, everything in Workers and Resources Soviet Republic is planned out and placed far in advance. I'm in the map editor right now, but everything from roads to sewer pipes to water pipes are simulated in this game. It's probably one of the, if not the most in-depth and advanced city builders out there on the market. So I'm happy to be coming back to it because I do enjoy playing this game, and I'm hoping to go into more storytelling with it, unlike I did with the original Saffier series. So, what am I doing here? Well, in the original Saffier series, I mentioned that the location in which Saffier is in was unpopulated before the arrival of, us as the Communist Party building up this area. I find that incredibly unrealistic. Saffier, lore-wise, would take up a rather large area. It's a quite large peninsula that juts out into the Sapphire Sea. The same sea, by the way, that Octon was on. So yeah, Saffier logically would be a rather notable area with some pre-existing cities and pre-existing infrastructure like ports and roads and what have you. And then with the arrival of the communists, of course, Varenists in this universe, because of its strategic location, its many sheltered harbors, its abundance of natural resources, it's logical that the government the new government would want to develop it. Whereas, because this would be a mostly poorer and majority native region under the previous apartheid government, it would likely have been very underfunded and underdeveloped. So, what did I just do? You saw me build an entire city, and you'll notice that that city is in the same location as Martenstadt back in the original series. And that is intentional. Like I said, I find it very unrealistic that this entire place would be unpopulated. And Martenstadt was our first city that we built as a jumping off point in the original series. So I figured, if it exists in the original series, I want to kind of recreate it here, but have its older, pre-communist, sort of, settlement. So that is no longer Martenstadt, it is Rendsburg. And Rendsburg will likely be renamed to Martenstadt once we catch up to where the original series was in time. But for now, that is the city of Rendsburg. And I want to say it is probably the third or fourth largest city I'll build in this episode. Most of the bigger cities I'm actually going to do off camera. You saw me do the entire thing. That's basically the whole process. I go through, I do a rough road network with the dirt roads, place all the key buildings that I think we need, all the high density housing, and the central cathedral. Then I go back and upgrade all of the inner town roads to cobblestone. Finally do some lower density housing around the edges of the town, and then some landscaping, paving and trees. And I mean, that process gets repeated, I want to say 6 or 7 times. It's taken me about 2 weeks to do this episode. Just by virtue of, unlike, the game where I'm actually playing it, this is just me detailing a map. So I can't really record a lot of it for an episode. It's just me going around doing mapping things, and then, placing these towns and whatnot. But yeah, so that's basically the process for how I'm making these pre-existing towns. You'll notice that I didn't actually place any critical services, so each one of these towns has no water, it has no food production, it has no industry, so all of that is left up to us to build. Luckily, the Steam Workshop for Workers and Resources Soviet Republic is filled with hundreds and hundreds of very good assets. I want to say it really rivals City Skylines workshop scene. There's not as many technical mods for Workers and Resources, but there are so many great assets. Unfortunately, with the map editor, we're limited to vanilla assets. I'm sure there's a way to mod it to allow us to get the non-vanilla assets that I've downloaded, but I don't really care all that much. But yeah, here's another little town. This one is much smaller than Rendsburg that we built earlier. You can see it doesn't even have a large cathedral. It has this little church instead. There is a town that we skipped over at the mouth of the river that Martinstadt is on. Not Martinstadt, Rendsburg. That is substantially larger than both of these towns. But yeah, as you can see, it's more or less the same process that I did earlier for Rendsburg. I'll be honest, I forget the name of this town off the top of my head, but hopefully we'll see it before I move on. But yeah, so what are we doing with this series exactly? So, as you can see, I'm placing a lot of older assets. This is most certainly not the sort of things that we would see being built in the 60s and 70s. We would see a lot of modernism and even some postmodernism at that point. This is very much classical architecture. Of course, it looks very Eastern European because the game is based off of Czechoslovakia. Sorry, I had to think there on what it was called. But as the country of Kingshaw, formerly the nation of Willemsland, is based off of what if the Dutch and Bretons both had a colonial empire and then the colonies kind of merged together. I imagine this sort of architecture isn't entirely realistic, or isn't entirely unrealistic for that sort of vibe. Of course, I'm aware that the Dutch have very distinctive architecture, so do the Bretons. But, I mean, this is the New World, some stuff would deviate, and I think that this is a close enough approximation. But yeah, so, I keep straying from the topic. So, as you heard in the intro, this is taking place, I want to say like 5 years? I forget. I did the intro voiceover like 2 days ago, so I forget the exact script. But, yeah, this is taking place almost immediately after the revolution that installed Premier Martin and the Veronist party into power in Kingshaw. A little bit of time has passed, so that's like the lore reason for why we're able to import, you know, more advanced goods, because obviously the capital region and other regions would have rebuilt by this point. But yeah, so we are starting out in game, I want to say in the year 1916. That, I forget what year that is equivalent to in Post-Draconis, but the timeline in the world of Laurentia is weird already because of Octon. But, yeah, so this is, if I recall correctly, the earliest, or not, other than Octon, of course, this is the earliest I've ever touched upon the timeline in a video. So I'm very, very excited to get into this. We'll see a lot of fun stuff as the technology progresses. Unfortunately, the caveat that I do have to mention, it's the same caveat that we had with the original Saffier series, is that this game is based off of real life. So, like, lore-wise in the original game, each one of these republics would be part of, like, the Soviet Union, or at the very least a fellow communist nation in the same world as the Soviet Union. So all of the vehicles are based off of real vehicles with real names. So like genuinely, you can see the blue border there at the bottom of the minimap. That's NATO. That is literally NATO. And if I wanted to, I could buy a Ford Model T. I'm not going to, but that goes to show that, like, these are real vehicles with real names from real countries. And the unfortunate part about that is none of these countries exist in this timeline. This, this country is not only entirely fictional, but it exists in an entirely fictional world. So that means that we are unfortunately going to have to deal with the date and time being in real life time and not in, like, canon Laurentia time. We're going to have to deal with, oh, yep, there's the map. Just for kicks and giggles, I guess. We're going to have to deal with, you know, importing vehicles from countries that don't exist in this world. And we're just going to have to, unfortunately, look over that. I am relatively active in the Workers and Resources Soviet Republic subreddit. And there is a way to mod all of the names of, like, the vehicles and whatnot to actually like be fictional. Like for example, Faron is one of the few non-communist nations that King Shah trades with because they are a native nation that was never colonized. Um, so, like for example, I could turn some of the Soviet bloc vehicles into like being imported from Faron, if that makes sense. But yeah, so um, it's unfortunate that we're going to have to deal with some having to overlook some things, but by and large, I'm excited with the setting. I'm excited with the premise of actually following this nation or this republic through time rather than through the brief like 30-year period we would have gotten to see it in the original series. We're going to see architecture, technology, and culture develop in a way that we would not have been able to see in the original series. The original series was very much a management-focused thing, and this very much is going to be a more story-focused society storytelling adventure. But yeah, you're seeing me place down all of these little towns. We're kind of like speed running now through me building all these cities, because it really is the same thing over and over again. You can see I'm actually trying to place down a few of these little villages. Functionally, I think these will be useless. I think their population is going to be so small that they're not even going to be able to manage the city services that I'm going to have to put here to allow them to survive. But it is what it is. I think it'll be fun regardless to like have to bulldoze all of these houses to build a highway at some point. But yeah. So I'm excited. I'm excited to get started here. As a matter of fact, once I finish this recording, I'm probably going to hop in game to start the second episode where we're actually going to be building things. I want to get this. I'm really excited because I have some really fun stuff planned. Because, like I said, Laurentia is not Earth. There are, of course, very obvious parallels. King Shah, kind of mirrors the Soviet Union in a lot of ways, and Anglia obviously mirrors America. But it's also worth mentioning that King Shah and Anglia are on the same continent. Imagine, if you will, that the Soviet Union and America were both on North America. Like, replace Canada with the Soviet Union, and you basically have this sort of scenario, which is kind of wild. In real life, the superpowers are a world apart. So what happens if they're literally next-door neighbors? I'm sure we're going to have some interesting dynamics, and I can't wait to get into, like, some political storytelling, where, like, there may not be a game mechanic for it, per se, but, it'll make for some interesting developments regardless. So, one last thing I want to mention here is this is an area that we have never seen in the original series. I mean, we've not seen a lot of areas in the original series. I purposefully edited the borders of this map to include this big area in the northwest. This was an area that was outside of the borders of the original map, but was relatively flat, and I was like, you know what? Screw it. Why wouldn't Saffier have this? I mean, there's a river there that makes for a perfect border. So, yeah, we get a whole new region to play around with, and with that being that big flat river plain, I could totally imagine that becoming like our big agricultural area, because the rest of the map is very, very limited in terms of space. Space for industry, space for farmland, space for residential. It's all extremely limited. So having that new little corner of the map in which we can develop, agriculture and whatnot, it being out of the way, it makes perfect sense for that to be like a really interesting farming area, perhaps with like a big city or two even along the mountain passes. But yeah, we'll definitely have to see. Unfortunately, I will not be releasing this map on the workshop as it is derivative to somebody else's map. I don't feel that it's ethical for me to do so. But I am very, very excited to explore this new version of Saffier with all of y'all. I'm really hoping that this series at least does decently. By the time Octon died, it was actually really picking up steam. Almost all the videos were getting over 1,000 views, and by the time Saffier died, the series was basically already dead, only getting like 100 or 200 views. So I'm hoping that doesn't repeat, but genuinely, if it does, I don't really care. It's my channel. I'll do what I have fun doing on it. We are, however, unfortunately, approaching the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed watching me play around with this map, play around with building it up. I have a Discord and a Patreon if you're interested in that, and if you're not, please do like and subscribe. I really appreciate it and helps the channel grow, reach more people. Alrighty folks, I'm the Kuma Courtwade, and have a good one.